Welcome to the Greg Bennett Show. I'm your host, Greg Bennett, and this was an absolutely fantastic episode with a good mate of mine, Seth Pepper. Seth is a world-leading mental performance coach. He's working with everybody from motorsports and Formula One drivers to NBA and some of the world's greatest hockey players and golfers, and then also in the world of film and television and business and everything else in between. And his approach is fairly simplistic, but I think you'll find listening to him that you'll leave today going, wow, I've got some really great tools to help optimize my own life. We discuss everything from goal setting and visualizing to practicing gratitude and even time and our own mortality and how that can be really used as a catalyst for living fully. I think you'll find there's so many great takeaways in this one. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. And remember, success comes to those who endure just one moment longer. Right. Well, today we're diving into the new year with a very special guest, someone who's no stranger to the show. He was last on about 18 months ago, and it was just one of my all-time favorite episodes, as it was yours, the listener. It's one of the most downloaded episodes that I've had on the Greg Bennett Show. He's a high-performance mental coach with just unique insights into the power of the mind. And last time he was here, we explored the depths of mental training and its profound impact on performance. And today, well, we're going to try and notch it up a little bit and take it even a little bit further. So without further ado, welcome back to the Greg Bennett Show, Seth Pepper. How are you, mate?
I'm doing well. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time.
Yeah, well, you and I have had a couple of conversations, since you were last on the podcast, and both of us always leave those conversations buzzing. And it was like, yeah, we need to record again. And you've been busy. You've been really busy since we last spoke in this last sort of year, 18 months. What's been give us a little recap into Seth's world. Who are you working with, and what are some of your clients, and how's your world changed a little bit?
Well, it's been, very exciting. Just working with, people basically across the board, whether it's in sports or business and even the arts, of just people that are in intense environments that are dealing with high stakes, high pressure, potential failure and big wins. So in kind of, with my obsession, it's a healthy obsession that I just keep going down the rabbit hole. And, it's been fun to be able to help people to create basically the reality that they knew was possible. And then we go out and actually make it a reality, in physical form.
So who are some of the people that you've taken on this last sort of 18 months? Can you mention names? I don't know if you can mention names, or you can maybe mention where, the kind of fields that they're in.
Yeah. It's probably best to just kind of mention what they're up to. And I will, as we talk, if a name does come up and it's a good example, I'm happy to talk about that. Just, basically, you name it, PGA, LPGA, professional golf, NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, soccer, football, with the MLS, and a lot of college, like working with individuals, top programs, and then, the entire team, working with coaches and then an individual on that team. And then, as I've shared in the past, working with film directors that, that introduced me to other film directors, and working with, fashion designers that are showing at the highest level, and even a Marvel Studio actress. And, it's been exciting.
My goodness.
I don't know. These conversations, it's funny because I'll have a conversation like this with someone that really draws it out, and, someone will be listening, and then they'll reach out and they'll say, I just like the way that you think. I like the, even the sound of your voice. And would you consider, working with me? And, it's always an honor to be asked to do that. So,
well, while we're at the front of the show, let's put that. If I was somebody that wanted to work with you, what is that kind of process like? They reach out to you, you take me from there. How does the process work?
Well, generally just starts with a nice, friendly conversation. We're probably both seeing if it's a good fit. And so for me, I'm just asking for someone, that you trust and openness, so sometimes you're working with someone that's going through a really difficult time. I think that might be the most predictable, from an outsider. But when I present to large groups, especially, teams or, even in business leadership groups, it's usually the alpha male, alpha female that tracks me down in the hallway afterwards and says, wow, you speak my language. I want to keep talking about this. I need someone, that I can talk to these things. And so that's been kind of neat because traditionally you might think that it's more of the mental health side of things, but it's actually the mental performance side that crosses over, and everyone's like, oh yeah, you speak this language, because it's not something that is genuinely or generally shared. Really, when you're watching TV, whether you know it or not, you're watching highlight reels. So you're watching end results. You're not watching the process. And so someone that's deeply invested in the process, so, oh, wait, no, you're speaking my language. I need to hear this more often. And a lot of times it's extremely simple, but it's not easy. So you're I like to say I'm holding space for that simplicity. So.
Wow, mate. Well, I'm sure after this recording, you'll be getting a lot more as well. How is your approach and the way you operate evolved? Since we last spoke, anything sort of surprising the way that you approach things that you kind of like, it's an area that I hadn't looked into?
Yeah. It's probably what I just said, that it really is as simple. And when you help people through these moments, at first you might see it as fear of failure, but when we get close to winning, then it becomes fear of success very often. And so that's been really interesting. And then to dive into my own personal experience, of being able to really, when I was, I'm going to take us on a little bit of a journey right away.
Awesome.
When I was younger, I had a mentor say to me, and that, I think that you're going to be a preacher. And, at the time I didn't go to church. I didn't really study the Bible, so I didn't know how that was going to work. I was interested, but I didn't understand, how that destination might even happen. But what I realized is that, what I'm working with people, now is to be able to, the sophisticated word is transcend. So transcend the moment. So when you put, for me, I mean, my career started when I was 14. And then when I'm getting ready for the big races in the world, it's boiling down to this one moment. So you have, for me, it was a little over a decade of just putting everything you possibly can into this one moment. And this one moment, this one race, is really a life or death situation of this vision that you have. And so, for me, I have that sense of urgency of like, okay, this is not just the person that I'm working with, but it feels like an extension of me. And in that moment, we have to transcend it. So it's something that flows through us. So we see it a lot in movies, and maybe we're not necessarily aware of being able to place it. But the simple version that I like to share, because a lot of us have seen the Star Wars trilogy, is, when it's the gurus, whether it's Yoda or Obi-Wan, that says to Luke Skywalker, use the Force. What he's really saying, Joseph Campbell, well-known mythology expert that works with George Lucas to help him really get Star Wars to where it was. What he's talking about is allow the life force, to flow through you. So it's this space of transcendence. It's putting everything into this moment, and it's all about you. And then at that last moment, it's like, no, you got to let it go. You just got to surf that wave. You got to allow it to just be more than you. And that's what's been interesting, is and that's possibly the preacher now, of being able to help people experience this sort of selfless, egoless, if you will, maybe even spiritual and religious moment in their performance. And it goes to this whole other level. And I experienced that on a really profound level. And I wasn't ready for it, but it was still awesome. I still had the best race of my life, but I wasn't ready for it. So I try to now make it really familiar so people know that it's coming. And then when it happens, they can, really be ready and allow it to just flow through them.
I love that. I love the state of flow. I think we talked about that a little bit on the last episode we did together, and it was, was it Csikszentmihalyi, the state, finding that state of flow, and I always put it down to, it's like when you're on a long car trip, and you suddenly go, 2 hours went by. It's like, wow, and you hit this state of flow. But to be able to get to that state of flow under your own control, like sometimes it's one thing to talk about it, it's another one to sort of switch it on and off. How do you kind of get people to be able to learn how to get to flow state? No, that's great. So I will say a name. I made this presentation over at UMass Dartmouth, and it was alongside of D. Brown. He's in the NBA. He was with the Celtics for 10 years, and he won the slam dunk contest. And he did this thing called the no-look dunk. It's still, if you go back through the lineage of people who have won, it's probably one of the signature dunks of all time. So we were having dinner the night before, just getting to know each other. And I said, D, did you know when you left the ground that what you were going to do? And he looks at me with this sort of shock, and he goes, no one's ever asked me that. And this is probably one of the most significant moments for this sport. And no one's asked him this simple question, which to me, my instincts, I kind of know where it's going. And he goes, you know what? I was leaving the ground and I knew that I was going to slam the ball, but I also was going to have my eyes closed, and I didn't think anyone would believe me that I kept my eyes closed. So I wrapped my arm around my face and I blocked my view as I slammed. And it was almost like a divine inspiration that happened in mid-flight. To me, that gives me the chills. Like that's the flow, when everything comes together out of necessity. But we have to create the necessity. And the interesting part, which we mentioned before, is that it happens in an uncomfortable, process. Because there's going to be some part of you that, that wants to keep you safe. And so that's what I'm trying to help people to do, is probably become more and more familiar with it. Working with a race car driver at the highest level. And, this happened this week. I was taking him through. I said, the Michael Jordan of racing, across the board, a lot of people regard Senna as one of the greats. Well, Senna had this perfect lap. That's, a perfect performance. And it was kind of cool. It happened in Monaco, 1988. For some reason, they didn't record it. Even better for the legend. It's still, back then we had cameras everywhere, and the whole thing was televised, but for some reason his qualifying was not recorded. And he had 3 laps, and all 3 would count towards, where he's going to end up. And on the first lap, he went the fastest. So he's already in pole, so that, he could just stop. And he just kept going and going faster and faster, to the point where he was close to 2 seconds faster. Now, this is a sport that's decided by hundredths of a second. And here he is 2 seconds faster than second place. And second place with his teammate who had the same exact car. So he's in a space that he's never experienced. None of us have maybe even seen in the racing world. And he wouldn't even talk about it for 2 years. He didn't know where to place it. He was a person of faith. And so he said it was like, eventually he said that it was like an out of body experience. It was like I was traveling through this tunnel, and, I was like unconscious, and it was just pure instinct. And so that's it. That's the transcendence moment. And so what I want to do with people is make that a real thing, right? Like that's a real thing. And once I started, I work with this Major League Baseball player, first round draft pick. And so he's a hitter. And so I'm telling him about Senna.
That's what I love about this, is that I get to share this obsession with, all these different athletes and all these different people and flow happens for factory workers. It happens when mothers are reading to their children. It happens in all walks of life. We're experiencing flow. And so I'm talking to this baseball player, and I said, let's talk about possibly, your perfect lap. Have you ever had a perfect lap experience? He's like, well, before I got to the major leagues, big moment in high school was, that I went, I think it was 6 for 6, which means 6 times to the plate, 6 times he hits it. Mm-hmm. I said, well, what was it like? And he goes, well, I was triggered at first because there were a lot of scouts there. There was a lot of hype. The other team started talking a lot of crap. So I was triggered. I was fired up a little bit. But all of a sudden, everything got really playful. Like it was like practice. And when I was standing at the plate, getting ready to hit the ball, it was like the ball was the size of a beach ball, right? It was like they were lobbing it to me. I said, see, that's it. It's this place of play. And so what I'm, working with is, the most recent is this sort of the flow meets where does this happen? So they've studied it now. So now we can really openly talk about it. We don't have to hold it inside for years. Like Senna's going, what do I do with this? No one's talking about it. It's not measured. But we're actually studying it now. And so it's fun to be able to talk through it. And so they found that children all the way up to the age of 8 were in a constant state of flow. Now you have young children and I have some children that are kind of coming out of that stage. And so right up until 8, we're fully in our body. We're out of our head, fully in our body all the time. That's basically flow. And then right about 10 is when we start to wake up. We start to make conscious choices. We start to, be more determined. And so that's what I try to help people to do is, okay, at this high level, high stakes moment of impact, I want you to get in touch with your 10-year-old self, right? That 10-year-old work. And so I have this NHL player, and he was, I started working with him when he was struggling a bit. And, I said, how does your relationship to the sport? And, he's like, I don't know. I can't explain it. When I go out on the ice, I just feel heavy and I'm feeling tired. Right. And for me, I'm looking at patterns. That's always been my fascination, is patterns. So I'm not making any judgments, of course. And so I said, okay, when you go out on the ice and you're feeling heavy, does it feel like, you're carrying around, I call it the ape, right? You're carrying around this, pounds, I don't know the translation to metrics, but 250 pounds. So it's a big animal. And you're carrying this ape. And he's like, what do you mean the ape? Well, the ape is the past. It's all those trophies you won as a kid. And it's all those expectations. It's all the future projections into the future. And so here he is. He's first round draft pick, made a lot of money. It seems like millions of dollars, but for someone in that position that's can't figure this stuff out, it feels like millions of, if you will, pounds, weight, like physical weight. That's why I use these metaphors is, there's an ape and we want to be able to get the ape off our back. So, I said, I just want to give you permission. I'm just focused on you in your performance arena. Before you step on the ice, I want you to put the ape down. Don't put it on your back, because that's a choice. You choose to carry the past. You choose to carry the future. Put it on the side. And I said, well, what's most likely also happening is that it's not just that you're tired, but also now it probably the thing that you used to love to do feels like a chore. It feels like a job that you're being forced to do. And he's like, oh man, I didn't even want to get on the plane to go to the game. And I was like, wow. A hockey player that doesn't want to get on the plane to go play at the highest level. I said, that's why we got to get that ape. I want you to just flush the past, let it all go. We need you to be fully present. None of that matters. The future doesn't matter. None of that. And what I want you to do is I want you to play like your 10-year-old self. And I said, when you were 10, didn't you just hit the puck just to see it go as fast as it can? You just nail it? He's like, oh, absolutely. I said, didn't you used to like skate and slam your buddies up against the boards, hit them against the wall just to see how hard you could hit them, just for the fun of it? Yeah, absolutely. I did that. I said, that's what I want you to do. I want you to play with that, that 10-year-old self sort of, joy. And so I study these things and, track it back to Major League Baseball. The figures that I've heard is Dominican Republic. It's a small country and it produces roughly around 13% of all Major League Baseball players.
Wow.
Yeah, this small country is providing all these baseball players. And so working with baseball players at the highest level and also in university, I'm always asking questions and looking for the pattern. And they say they're a joy to play with because their priority, even at the highest level. I mean, you think of anyone all the way down, Sosa, the Grand Slam, the people that are going to be in the Hall of Fame, they all play with a sense of joy. It's like they're still a 10-year-old out in the streets playing the stickball, even at the highest level. So that's what I'm trying to help people to do, is just to go have fun. It's easy to say, go have fun, but I really want to give these people an understanding that this is a performance enhancer, to just allow yourself, because a lot of times as we go up through the rankings, what we tend to do is, I need to be more focused. I got to be more serious.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the death right there, is when you get more serious, right?
I thank you for all of that. That's so cool. I'm nodding my head over here going, yeah, because it's even from, the guests I've had on my show, some of the world's greatest endurance athletes on the planet, and the amount of conversations we've often had where they've had the opportunity for whatever reason, they've been injured or they've already won a big race, but whatever it is, the expectations to perform are removed and they're just free to play. Right? This opportunity to be free to play. And suddenly they go do this amazing performance. And we talk about on the show, they'll be like, oh yeah, I had this, because I didn't have any pressure and I didn't have any expectations because whatever, fill in the blanks. But basically they go on and they just crush it because they don't have these expectations of the past or the future. They can be just present, to your point. And I love it even talking about joy in what you do. It got me thinking with a meeting I had yesterday. So even in business, one of the things I'm sort of saying is, look, I want the world to know that we're having fun building what we're doing. If we're not having fun, it's going to be evident on the back end of what we're actually producing. It's like, yes, there's work to be done. And yes, we've, timelines and restrictions, but we can still have fun in what we can be doing together. And that'll show in the delivery of what, product we're giving to the world. I just simply love this. Would you call it removing expectations or managing expectations and just replacing that with joy and being present?
Yeah. I each person has a different way of describing it. So I try to use their words. For me, I'll just take you right into it. Through my personal experience, whether it's, what I've achieved at being number one in the world at one moment, or helping others to become number one at what they do. I came up with the 3 M's. Okay. So I was talking, I can say his name, Eddie Jones, the rugby coach, one of the greatest of all time.
Legend.
And I was just talking to him, I don't know, just a few days ago. And he's like, he gets the pen out. He's like, what do you got for me? So I was like, Eddie, it's the 3 M's. He goes, what do you mean 3 M's? Okay. So the first M, think about the race car, right? The metaphor of the race car. That's the mechanical. Okay. So everything in the performer's life, how are you taking care of your body? Are you training? How are your skills, nutrition, even sleep? Those are all the mechanical elements. Okay. So that's usually on the person that I'm working with. That's their responsibility to take care of. I will touch, on sleep. That's kind of a crossover. And then the next M is the mental. right? So I kind of call that the mechanics of the mind, right? So we have these tools that we develop, and we have ways to, develop awareness, handle pressure, be able to, embrace failure, all those sort of things with tools, simple tools in that mental toolbox. And I said, but the third M, this is the M that I think is overlooked. We all feel it, but it's actually looking at it and being able to work towards it, and then work through it. The third M is magic, right? And so Ted Lasso is a movie or a show that's really become popular in pop culture right now. And his whole principle is that sign on the back wall that says believe, right? So to me, the transcendence, I know you've had some people on that spoke of the F it switch, where you just say F it, and you just break all those internal rules and those external rules, and you just lay it out and you go for it, and you perform on a whole nother level, that perfect lap level where you just allow the force to flow through you. That's the magic. And you could even say that it's luck, becoming more lucky because you're more prepared and you're in the right space. But that's magic. And that's the spot where I'm just like, okay, we need magic in this equation. As soon as I told him, he's like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant.
I know it's funny, the way you can, not funny, it's interesting the way you can describe the same thing, but describe it in so many different ways. And to your point earlier, it's whatever makes that person tick is how they'll understand it. It's like to go back to swimming, because that's, your past. And obviously I did a lot of swimming as a triathlete. And it's funny, my wife would often say, my straight left arm, I had a real issue with it. And my rotation and blah, 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 blah. We can break down my swim stroke another day. But basically she'd be telling me, do this, do that, do that. Okay, got it. But didn't really listen. Then one day I'd come home from just training at a random pool, and a random coach would say, oh, Greg, rotate like this, by doing this. And he'd explain it in a completely different way.
Yeah.
But it was a way that I understood. And I'd come home to Laura, oh, I've learned a new way, and this is how I can, be doing this. This isn't. She's like, Greg, I've been telling you that for years. Needless to say, that doesn't end well. But it's I love the human mind and in the way we can describe things and how it resonates with us. It's absolutely beautiful. I want to shift gear a little bit. I want to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is that of visualizing.
Okay.
And I want to get your thoughts on it. And so I guess the first question, in your experience, what's sort of the most common obstacle that you find people face when they try to visualize their goals? And I guess, do you have some tools that they could use to overcome it? Because I don't think we need to sit here and tell people about the power of visualizing. I think most people understand that, look, if I can really see it, I get it. The power of the mind is wonderful. But what are some of the tools that we can give for people that might struggle in visualizing?
Okay, well, I would take it, let's go to the foundation. This is the foundation that I build with someone. So I start with goals. I've always liked goals. I think that goals are a communication loop between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. So your subconscious mind, how can we drive our car and not think about it, right? We just say, okay, I'm going to go to the store, and maybe even have a phone call on the way. You don't even think about something that's completely dangerous and chaotic, and you just do it, right? That's the power of the subconscious mind. And so what if you could put that to work so that it's always working in your favor and kind of building a bridge to this future, this vision? And so I like to write it down on a piece of paper. You can do it digitally, of course, too. But basically setting simple targets that puts that subconscious mind, the supercomputer, in motion, because it really just wants an A to B. It may take a while, but it wants put the GPS coordinates in, please. So if someone says, I want to be fulfilled in life, where's the GPS coordinates on that? Give me some metric in that quantifies that. And so once we get that down on the page, taking something from, the mind, or the etheric energy, if you will, the high frequency, and you're bringing it into the physical world, right? You're bringing it into this space where now we can turn this thought into a physical result. So got that in place. Subconscious mind is really visually based. So I encourage people to do the vision boards, right? I have the version that I shared on our first episode where I put up a picture of the Olympian, Pablo, in my picture, and I put it so they were touching. And so it worked as this, I call them visual cues, which is like a Post-it note. A Post-it note is a visual cue. Usually it's a bright colored piece of paper that you can stick within eyesight to remind you, oh, I need to do that, or I need to think that. Mm-hmm. And so to me, you need to take these goals and now start to see them, what might they look like? Mm-hmm. We don't know. A lot of times what happens is people sabotage themselves because they think they need to know the future. We're doing a guesstimate here. It's always a guesstimate. It hasn't happened yet. Mm-hmm. So anything is way more than nothing. So just have fun. Again, that's the interesting part about all this is I'm trying to give people permission to go back and be a kid again.
Yeah.
When you were a little kid, what'd you do? You hung your idols up on the wall, right? Yeah. You were creating your future reality.
How are your vision boards? Those posters were your vision boards as a kid. I love that.
Yeah. And so just do it as an adult, and have fun with it. It's important to enjoy. Again, this will be the theme throughout. Enjoy.
Oh, great. I love it. And what a great way to be starting 2024.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Give yourself some time. A lot of times, we have at least a day, Christmas or New Year's or whatever it might be. Hopefully you have a little bit of downtime and just take that time for yourself to write out, okay, what do I want to happen in the next 12 months, right? And I encourage people to get out of their comfort zone because, again, in order to get into flow, you have to be uncomfortable, so I like to have little simple phrases. So you need tension to get your attention. So you have to be reaching for something, so that you take it serious. This is not a to-do list where I want to do this. And you're going to do it. No, push yourself. Create something that's going to, need a want, more like it. You want it to happen. And so you're reaching for something, start to make it visual, surround yourself. So I have these top athletes, and I collect all these things. And, I have archives of video clips that I show people because it's better that you hear this from Gretzky, Kobe, Jordan, rather than just me saying it. But I have all these examples, even, pictures. And, the World Cup was not too long ago. And Neymar, the soccer football star from Barcelona, one of the people I work with sent me a picture, and on his lock screen on his phone, he had a picture of the trophy. And so he's doing the same thing at the highest level on world stage. His lock screen is telling his subconscious mind, I want this trophy. Right. Mm-hmm. And it sounds so simple, but I have these amazing stories that even blow me away. Where I have a university chemistry professor who, I started with her and I said, what's the goal that you have? What's that gold moment? And she said, I want to win the Emmy. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. A chemistry professor winning an Emmy. Mm-hmm. How do you see that? How does, and I just want to know kind of the points. I'm not saying, justify it. I'm just telling you how you see this playing out. And she said, well, I know how to teach small little children chemistry on a college level, university level, and I want to change the face of education. And so I see that eventually that being a comic book that turns into a animation, and in the animation, win an Emmy. Awesome. A to B. It sounds wild, right?
Yeah.
You want stories? I got stories for you, Greg.
Yeah. Keep the stories coming. I love the stories. Yeah.
So she writes it down on her goal sheet, and then she puts up visual cues. For her, it's a whiteboard. She writes it out and has some pictures of the. She did put the Emmy on her lock screen on her phone, so she's seeing that every day. So we work on networking. So your thoughts become your words, become your actions. So we're getting our thoughts clear. Now we're going to start to speak and communicate to the world around us naturally because we're thinking it more often. It's more focused. Mm-hmm. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start to talk to people. And so we started using, social platforms to reach out. And we use the same approach. And this is a true story. She created such a presence online that the governing body that decides the Emmys contacted her and asked if she would be a judge. True story. So she's been judging for 2 years now. She's been judging the award that she wants to ultimately win. And this is just a beautiful sort of manifestation of how things evolve over time, because now she's seeing these behind the scenes entries, and she's like, I just reviewed 100 of them, and Seth, mine's as good or better than all of these. And so now she's realizing it. Now she's making it into a real thing. So not too long ago, this is a few weeks ago, they had done a PBS. We have a public broadcasting system in the United States. So they had done this PBS special that was based on her story, what she's doing, the journey. And she texts me, and she won the Emmy. That show won the Emmy. And what's so interesting about this, if you really look at the pattern, is that the goal was to win the Emmy. And she goes, you know what this is it's just confirmation of the clarity that you have to have on your goal sheet, because I said I wanted to win an Emmy. Well, this is the only way that I would actually have my name on the Emmy, is to have a show about me, because when my show does win the Emmy, it will be the production house that is totally financing it.
Isn't it amazing? It's like that whole thing, God has a sense of humor, right? So be careful what be specific about what you wish for. It's amazing. I often do that to myself, and we can go into this in a moment, practicing gratitude in the morning. And I always, visualize and things. And it's one of those, as I try to, my thoughts, choices, actions, exactly like you said, it's like, okay, be very clear about what you're saying. Be very clear. Get as nuclear as you can to understand what are you really wanting, and not to say it's like her story is beautiful, because it's actually not a bad thing. It's like it actually just gets you moving. Right. Quite often, it's like, don't just think about things and then go, "Oh, wouldn't that be nice?" It's like, no. Practice this visualizing. Create these vision boards. Create the lock screen on your phone. Start actually doing small little actions that add up.
Yep.
And you never know where it's going to take you, because now you're moving.
Yep. In that first lane, we're going to have to get over a few lanes to go over the turn lane or wherever our, next stop is. And so once you're in motion, just a little bit, all of a sudden, all those obstacles start to dissolve.
Yeah.
Because now you're going more and more the speed of others. And so you naturally, the other lanes start to open up because you're in motion. So I always say this all the time to everyone, the momentum is key. Everything's momentum based.
100%.
Everything.
Yeah,
Everything.
Love that. I actually did a post on LinkedIn about a month ago, and it was titled "Keep Moving." Just keep moving. It's like a Dora. Is it Dora the fish? So anyway, just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. I can't remember the movie now. It's the kids' movie. Finding Nemo. That's it.
Yeah.
Just keep swimming. Just keep moving. And it is amazing. What about for people that maybe sort of stuck in the terms of finding a goal that kind of maybe excites them? Maybe, and it's, I always talk about having a passion and aligning it with a strength But for people that maybe are a bit stuck, is there any kind of tools that they can use to help them find a goal, or is it, just throw a few out there and see what happens? What's your take on that?
It's a combination. Again, it's going to be an individual, situation, of course. But I always celebrate just getting it on the page. Even if you don't have a metric and you do want to experience a fulfilling life, that's better than nothing. Put it down.
Yeah,
And just revisit it. So I call it gardening the goals, which is every week or every other week, whatever, I'm working with people on, a regular interval, and people can do this themselves as, every Sunday I'm going to check in on my goals or whatever it might be, part of your routine, you revisit it. And, just like gardening, some days you're just tilling the earth and everything looks okay. And I'm just touching it and making sure everything's good, watering it. And then other days it might be, oh, you know what? This has become a weed. I'm going to pull this out and put something else in its place.
Right.
So I think people will almost self-sabotage in a way, going, oh, I need to know with perfect clarity exactly what I want in life. And,
yes.
I work with business people that are in sales, entry-level sales, and they'll say, well, I don't know what my purpose is. And and so I said, well, let's just get in motion, and over time, the purpose might, all of a sudden become clear. And so to your point, we get busy and get working. And so once their sales picked up and then they become the number one sales, this is a true story as well, off of an F1 Formula One podcast. They had heard me, and, he was the same limitation at the beginning. I don't know what my goal is. And so did that, just get busy, get moving. And he became a manager because he had done so well individually from the work we were doing. And once he became a manager, then the purpose became more and more evident, where he's like, oh, I'm affecting other people's lives, and they have families, and I'm able to help them provide for their families. Oh, I get it now, but we were in motion by then, right?
Yeah. No, that's well put. No, it's so true, because you kind of, I know as one of my favorite topics is also talking about, athletes, professional athletes that sort of transitioning to, let's call it civilian life, but life without sport and without such a tremendous amount of purpose. It's whatever field you were, it's and sort of stoking that fire to try and re-find another purpose. And it can be quite difficult when these athletes have lived a life of passion and purpose. Like, they found their passion young, they got to live it. And for many of them became quite successful financially as well. Not triathletes so much, but other sports. And I almost say some of the finance, it almost hurts them to then keep moving. Whereas, triathletes, we retire, we might have a little bit of money in the bank, but basically it's, you got to keep moving here. Like, you're forced to keep moving a little bit. And I almost think some of these professional athletes that when they retire, they've got tens, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars, and re-finding purpose to keep moving. It's an interesting area that you and I can talk more about, actually. I might have you talk, because it's one of my pet areas that I'm diving more and more into, is this ability to transition. But I think you nailed it. It really is about, look, just write down some basic things that you might be interested in having, and start just moving towards them, very, very small little increments. And you never know how that snowball might, take off. But it's very cool, mate. Let's shift again. I want to, I mentioned it a little bit before about the practicing of gratitude. And for me personally, people have heard me talk about on the show, so I won't go into my whole gratitude practice every day, but it allowed me to gain an enormous amount of perspective on my life. And I've practiced gratitude to the point now that there's days where I just say things and I don't feel it. And there's days that you almost feel it between the brain and the gut. Like, you feel this deep gratitude, and all the weight of the world lifts off you. Are you working with your clients on these kind of tools, these kind of habits, or do you allow them to sort of dictate? How have you found some simple gratitude practices, and what are some gratitude practices that you like for your clients to explore?
Well, I'll go back and answer the first question, and it'll lead into the next one. So we'll do two for one here. Okay. So I'm extremely practical, right? I'm a tough sell. Even the word visualization, I saw that. I was like, oh yeah, studies but what is that? And so for me, it's simple tools. And so what I did because it's day to day, you're making some sort of agreement with yourself of a daily practice. So visualization is really important to do on a daily basis, I would say. That's something I wish I would have been more in tune with. When I started studying Michael Phelps and what he did with Bob Bauman, his coach, it was creating a routine of visualization so that it's 5 minutes every day versus I'm going to do this massive half an hour, maybe on the weekends. And then that can just keeps getting kicked down the street, right? We never really get to that. We have moments, right?
Yeah.
Maybe New Year's.
Yeah, New Year's. Yeah, people listen to this episode. Yeah, I can do it once.
Yeah, exactly. So we want something that's going to be part of your daily routine where you don't even need to make a choice. So it's like brushing your teeth. So you take a habit, and we're starting to talk more and more about this, but creating a chain of habits that are connected. So brushing your teeth might be part of your routine, and then you just put visualization and maybe a 5-minute quiet time visualization in there as well, and so that you never have to make a choice. It's just, this is what I do every morning.
Yeah.
And that really builds up. You, again, getting started moving, that builds up over time. So the reason why I introduced that is because for me, visualization was really simple. I want to go to the future. I want to go to this intense situation. Everything's going to be on the line, that Olympic moment. And I want to be able to visit it. And then each time I visit it, I think I'll become more familiar with it. And then I'll become calmer. I'll have a greater level of poise when I actually get there. So I called it going into this sort of, basically a movie theater. And I would sit there and I'd run through the scenario of what it's going to be like. And then I would also feel the feelings, which is really important. Don't just achieve something, but actually feel like, how does this affect your life? Mm-hmm. That will bring in a lot of the power of the subconscious mind. That's kind of the glue that holds it all together. And so when I actually did win, people ask, well, what's it like to win at that level? It's simple. It goes back to this visualization, or I called it time travel, that movie theater in my mind is, oh, well, that day I got to invite everyone that I knew into the movie theater with me. And it just became real for everybody else. But I'd been living there the whole time. So that's visualization to me, or time travel, whatever you want to call it. So going to gratitude, same thing. Very, very simple tools, because I just want to give someone the principle of something, and then at the end of the day, this is a very subtle art. It's probably one of the most powerful things you can do as a human being, but it's extremely subtle. So I need people to buy in. I need them to come up with their own solutions. I'll give you examples. I love to give you examples. That's what I do, is collect all these different versions of it. But at the end of the day, I want it to be your version. And so with gratitude, I'm reasoning with myself, reasoning with hopefully the greatest cynic, is that you can only think one thought at one time. Now, people talk about multitasking. That's something different, but they've proven that you can only have one thought at one time. So immediately I think, okay, well, you have a choice from moment to moment to either go nervous, go worry, all those sort of, really almost destructive spaces to be, or you can move towards gratitude. And gratitude is the most powerful, positive, mindset, emotion that we can experience as human beings. And it has so many great benefits to it. So I start with the simple one-to-one, right? You get one thought, you choose. Mm-hmm. And if you can start to really feel the effects of gratitude and get to the point where you're a practitioner or, an expert of it, like I make the point that I know that it's so effective in my own life, I can literally look into the sky and go, wow, I'm so grateful the sky is blue. Yep. And if it's gray, I can do the same thing. Look at that gray. It is so beautiful, that gray. I'm so grateful that it's that gray.
I'm laughing because this is exactly how I operate. I'm like taking a deep breath, going, I go, this fresh air is, I've spent enough time in Beijing to know that that's not, something you take for granted. It's like this fresh air is just so great. Starting, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So keeping it simple and finding a way. So with an athlete, let's say, that's a good example is, well, if it's a golfer, have you ever thought about the miracles of like all the evolution, of the manufacturing of a golf club or a golf ball, or if it's a tennis player, the equipment. Because when I get in a car, I'm in a state of gratitude. I'll just think of all of these things. Remember back in the day when we were in covered wagons and we'd have to get out the horse and we'd have to, who knows if there's even a road to get to where we need to go. And look at this, almost nowadays it's like a push of a button and we can be going, the speed of light almost. And it's something that's easy to take for granted. And as I'm feeling that state of gratitude, I don't even notice that I'm in traffic. I'm just, fully present with being grateful and pushing out all those frustrations of,
it's really cool, that, isn't it? I use it myself to get to neutral as quick as I can, right? It's like this, even, I don't know, have you ever, we have an expression at home called 2 a.m. brain. Sometimes you wake up and all the stresses of the world suddenly hit you. You're like, what's going on? Yeah. And I'm like, go practice. I now do gratitude right away.
Good.
Yeah. Okay. Start. And gratitude for me is it starts big and gets more intense. So to your point, I'm grateful for the clean air, fresh running water, this house, the family within the house, and then go through each individual and sort of break it down, my own health, my strength, my whatever, like different things, and just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And it's amazing how that can just reframe you and put you back into parasympathetic, where sometimes when you wake up and for whatever reason, your nervous system turns on, you're like, what's going on? It's a handy little go-to tool to always have in your back pocket to get you back to neutral, as I put it. Like I just want to get to neutral. I'm not trying to be overly positive or overly happy. That's not the point. I just want to get out of this sympathetic state and get to neutral. And the mornings when I practice that time of gratitude and visualizing, standing outside, usually barefoot on the grass, that's my little ritual. But I always walk back to the house going, all right, today could be your last. How do you want to live it?
Yep.
And it sounds, for some people that may sound morbid. For me, it's the most inspiring words I can say to myself. When I open that door to go back in and the 4-year-old and the 6-year-old are running around crazy, hey, if this was your last day, what would be your response to that? You go in and you love the sound of kids screaming and laughing. You love the chaos, right? It's like, if this is your last day, how do you want to live it? And it changes that perspective. And this is kind of one I'm transitioning us into another area that I'm terribly fond of. I've had so many conversations with a lot of guys sort of in their mid to late 30s for some reason. I'm not saying that it's all people, but all saying they all want to live to 150.
Yep.
And I'm always thinking, I say, why? So you, Greg, no, I'm talking about living to 150 and being really healthy. I'm like, yeah, but why? What are you not doing that you need an extra tack on 60, 70, 80 years for?
Yeah.
I said, one of the greatest things that I think of is I know I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And I don't know when. That could be tomorrow. It could be 30 years from now. But I know it's happening. That's the one thing for certain. But I love that fact because guess what? That is the driver between really wanting me to live.
Yeah.
We've all had loved ones, pass away too soon, or our family or parents. And I always take from those funerals and those moments just going, right, let's live because your time's coming up too. And so talking about this topic of time and our mortality, how do you sort of guide people in their awareness of, their mortality as a positive force rather than a sort of a source of anxiety, I guess?
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Okay. So someone that I work with, he trusted me to work with his son, who's one of the players that I was able to help get to the NHL camps. And then he was the MVP in the NHL camp, and he calls me the Super Sherpa. So I guess there's a Sherpa that's helped more people, almost twice as many people, to the top of their Mount Everest. Instead of me, So it's a shared experience. I feel that mortality. I live in the same space as you're talking about. It's a sense of urgency, and that's what inspires me. Is that someone's vision, their goals, it has a life to it. And so I feel like in order for you to actually get into the flow state to begin with, there has to be a sense of urgency. So the people that surf the big waves, they have a sense of urgency that they could die on this wave. So what I try to do is translate that into all of the different people I work with, their lives, to say, caring is necessary. You have to care. And now all of a sense of, it's so simple, right? But people will almost convince themselves, well, I'll shoot lower, or, try and distract themselves from caring. It's like, no, you actually have to care. That's just, you don't get out of this life, without, if you want to experience your bliss, as Joseph Campbell talked about, follow your bliss. What I've been told that what he was actually saying is follow your blister, right?
Yes, because that's where the joy is, right? I love that, and the growth. Yeah.
So I feel like to really do this work, to be on the razor's edge, you have to feel your mortality. You have to feel like, whether it's the physical mortality or it's the mortality of your dreams, your goals. And so that's where I come from. My parents, they taught at a Native American school. And so I grew up going to powwows and, all these different interesting other ways of life. And in the Native American culture, their warriors had this great phrase that I love, which is, today's a good day to die, right? Which, is, make today a good day to die. This is it. This is it. This is all you got. And, I think that's kind of where I coach people from, is this space that, we don't have forever. And it is this moment. And that's what we love about this, is that we do care, and it's all on the line, and it is a make or break, right? That's it. You either make it or you don't. But the journey is the thing that's actually going to give you the reward. Because if I just came and gave you the trophy, and I gave you the millions of dollars, and I gave you the exposure, within a couple of months, you might become angry and resentful.
Yeah.
Because where did it, I don't know where this came from, right? I didn't have the journey. And in that journey, you're going to experience your mortality on a moment-to-moment basis if you're really on the razor's edge. Which, to me, to circle back to the visualization, is accepting the future reality now, so that you realize, even when I do win the gold medal or whatever it might be, I have a whole nother set of demands on my time. And, it's not like everything gets solved by that experience. And so what's going to happen in the future when, sponsors, and they have demands, and then you have people that know who you are and they have their demands, and your time is limited, all these different things. So allow that to be part of your, future projections. And then, to give you a technique that I was thinking about when you were talking about with gratitude, I remember Mary T. Maher. She's an Olympic gold medalist. She was the one that inspired me, when I started swimming. Madame Butterfly. She had this great visualization technique that I used, which is, before you go out to battle, so to speak, and you're visualizing, go through each muscle group and express your gratitude towards it. And it's so simple, but your feet, your toes, depending on how many parts you want to go through, but really give thanks and gratitude to each part, because they're about to go out there and do battle with you, right? And that mind and body connection is so important. When I'm working with someone and they have an injury, I'll always try and backtrack to that moment in time. And right now I'm at 100%, but I could be proven wrong. I will ask them, at that moment in time that injury happened, did you trust that your best effort was good enough? Or was it all about just being the best? And so far, 100%, they'll admit, no, I didn't trust that my best effort was enough. I overextended myself. I was trying to do this superhuman, thing that was outside of my ability. I said, yeah, you broke that trust between your mind and your body. And so we have to bring that back together, right? So that you can have that trust. So
I heard it once explained, like, ask the body, don't tell it, and start having a conversation with your body, to be specific on what you're saying. But I also, one of the things I'm hearing from you, and it's kind of the way I feel like we are trading our time constantly. I want to almost write a book on time trading. We have all these financial trading books and all these other. Well, what are we trading? And it's living an intentional life, I think, is what we're saying. Is if you I don't mind if you want to be lazy and just watch some TV for a while, but be intentional. Know that you're doing that for a reason and you're decompressing or whatever it is. But be as intentional with the time you have left. And I was telling somebody the other day, I said, yeah, I'm 52, right? I like to look at 5-year blocks. It used to be 4 years because that was Olympic cycles, but it's 5-year blocks. I've got 6 5-year blocks left. If I'm lucky, right? And look, maybe there'll be a couple more after that, but 6 of those 5-year blocks. I have 3 of those are assigned because my kids are going to be with me for 3 of them, right? Then I have 2 where I'm going to be well and truly into my 70s and no matter what I try and do, my health is going to be declining because I'm actually quite a healthy 52-year-old. Like I could probably slow it down a little bit, but I'm really, my golden days of optimal performance in physical performance are behind me. But it's all about slowing down that health line. And so now I just look at life in these 5-year blocks. Okay, we're going to live here for the next 5 years, South Florida. These are the things that I want to experience with my kids. Boom, boom, boom. This is what I want to do in business. Boom, boom, boom. This is what I want to do in health and relationships. Boom, boom, boom. And they're in 5-year blocks. And the reason I'm doing it like this way is because, like an athlete mentality where you're striving towards goals, coming from an athlete, it's always easier, I feel like, with sport. But to put it into all these other categories in these 5-year blocks that I can live with intent, and and again, to your point earlier, you can have these visualizations that they could change and they can adapt and they move and they sway. But I can see clearly what I want to achieve in every 5-year block. And it's a fun way to take a little bit more ownership and control of your life. And again, I'm not saying that I'm not open to dramatic changes and interesting things that I hadn't expected, but I enjoy seeing my life in these 5-year blocks like that. It's a different way of doing it, but I don't know if it'll work, but it's taking that ownership and living life with intent a little bit more.
Well, I know my experience once I transitioned out of my sport, I was shocked at how few people actually set goals. And so now that I work with, I'll get on as I was saying earlier, I'll get on a podcast and just start sharing. And then people from all walks of life will kind of relate to, the metaphor at the very least of sports, because it's measurable and it has, this black and whiteness to it. So you can see that if it worked in performance here, it could possibly work in something that's a little more gray area. And, as we kind of work through things, I'm always, really feeling like they get such an advantage from, doing what you were just describing, where you just start to become conscious of your time. You start to become goal oriented in a sense of, and to go back to I like to circle back, obviously, to the goals, is that I ask this simple question: if you couldn't lose, what does that look like? I explore that. And when people start to dig into that, then all of a sudden, they get longer vision, and then they also start to develop purpose. And so purpose is a big word. It's not necessarily starting a hospital in, a poverty area. It is just opening the door for another purpose or person. That's purpose. So, how can we turn our goals from individual into purpose as well? How are you going to help others? And so once you start to break it down into these measurables, it's really exciting for people, because all of a sudden, I think they start to see a roadmap and they start to get excited about it, and they get excited about the journey. That's what I really want people to do. I want them to embrace failure. I want you to because that's the thing. Let's go back to the very beginning of this. What is it that the magic of a 10-year-old? They don't care if they're losing. They don't identify with losing at all. They just keep moving forward. Yeah. And when you're moving forward on constant reset, then you can live fully present, and your instincts are purely like just heightened to their unlimited, and my phrase is unlimit your potential. You want to unlimit your potential, go back to that 10-year-old self and allow yourself to keep moving forward and enjoying what you're doing. And then set these benchmarks knowing, okay, well, I'm going to have failure, but I'm going to learn something from this. So this is actually going to be the gift. And then, and that's what I like to point out with people that I do help, win or get the award or whatever it is, I'll always point out that, well, what do you feel after you've won this? And it's always, well, I want to win again. And so I'm trying to make that point with them over and over is that winning isn't really that fulfilling. It's a wonderful timestamp. That's it. It's a timestamp. In this block, as you called it, I achieved this. And then you start with another block and you go into the next. But it's what happens in the middle of that block, that journey. That's the fulfilling part.
It really is about just embracing the process and not being so focused on, yes, you need the goal to create to have the road, and then where that road takes you, how you get there. It really is, you don't know. It's going to be ups and downs and ebbs and flows. Never compare yourself to other people's lives. They're never quite what they seem. Get off social media and compare. Get rid of that FOMO. Get yourself to neutral as quick as you can. Adapt as fast as you can. I think I had Mark Webber on the show once, Formula One driver for Red Bull, and the whole episode we talked about his ability to adapt faster than anybody else. And I've taken that with me through everything. Somebody's saying no to a request or okay, move on, adapt. What's next? And I kind of feel like whoever adapts fastest wins is not the right approach, but you get my point. It's like adapting quick is great. Even in moments of despair, adapt, move. What can you do? Keep moving. Mate, this has been awesome. I want to finish with final four. You up for it?
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, we've got plenty more we could discuss, but I'm very conscious of your time, and I want to use you again in every sort of 6 months.
Okay.
All right. So final four questions that I ask all my guests, and I'm excited for your responses here. But what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Well, it's on the subject we've been speaking about. Don't be so serious.
I think that's from our whole conversation today is the thing that's resonated with me the most, and I have it written down here is, enjoy.
Yeah.
Enjoy life, enjoy the experiences, have some fun.
Yeah. Your sense of humor is your superpower, is what I try to get across to people. Yeah. Because in order to laugh at something, you have to be fully present. Let's say a joke. A joke is a structured little tiny story. So you have to be listening, and then you have to be fully present to be surprised by the left or right sharp turn of the punchline, right? Yeah. So that's what I love about humor is that, and then usually it's a perspective shift, right? So humor is a superpower on many, many levels. And so, I would tell myself to joke around a lot more. And, my brother's the opposite to me. So he's the goofy one in the family. And so, of course, full circle, I should have been more like my...
I'm always comparing myself to my brother like that as well. I should be a bit more like him. It's nice to have brothers that we can compare ourselves to and go, okay, I want to be a better man like him. Yeah. 3 people you'd want to have dinner with, non-family ideally, and they could be living or dead.
Well, I've become fascinated with Senna. I think that would be an interesting one. I mean, that's fairly recent, but, just to be able to, he inspired so many people, much like Kobe, to be able, I didn't get a chance to meet Kobe. I was getting closer and closer, and then he was gone. And so those are people that are process oriented, that I really feel like they lived in this, this space, this, rarefied air, and to be able to have those conversations, I think would be really important. And then a third person, let's see. I think those are pretty good for me.
Can I just turn up and sit there and I'll be quiet and just listen? And
it's all about, this sort of obsession that we all share.
Yeah.
Just, like Kobe would say, just get better, right? That's incremental improvements. So just kind of being in the space of these greats, to be able to go through and, just be able to pick their brain and listen. I think Bill Russell is an interesting person. He's a person that in his autobiography, he experienced the perfect lap, and he described it as a religious experience where, he'd say that the boss, I mean, he won, you think Michael Jordan's great was 6, or, Bill Russell, I think, won 10, in a matter of, I think it was 12 years. So he's dominant on the Celtics. And he's self-made, it wasn't necessarily this phenom. He was only recruited by one university. And so, these self-made people, those are the ones that really interest me, because they understand that you have to be a student of life, to really achieve something. And so he had this experience where he'd say that Boston Celtics, some of these games would really heat up, as he called it. And he said he had this one experience where he could act, it was an out-of-body experience again, where it wasn't about his team or the opposing team. He felt like he was familiar with everyone, and it went beyond competition. And so he knew where the ball was going to go next. But he knew that if he was to take advantage of that information or that experience, that all the plates would drop simultaneously. So I would love to have conversations with those three and have us all sit there and geek out about this transcendence moment.
I think it's really cool. I love when we all have those kind of stories where we can go, it was like I was steering my body.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't have too many of them, but I have some of them where I can remember certain performances where you're like, yeah, this was one where I was in that flow state and it was just, I could do whatever I want. I was like, wow. Yeah. All right. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
5 years. Well, a lot of people are saying I need to write a book. So I would like to think that I have at least one book that's been written. I started to speak a lot more. I enjoy getting up in front of large groups, and, and again, I look at patterns, and for me, my pattern, in some of the other, people that are kind of like my peers in my space, are sort of, chance encounter, again, what Joseph Campbell would call, synchronicity. Mm-hmm. We work with a child, and that child happens to be connected to the superstar of that sport, right? Yeah. So one of my closest friends, Graham, started with Aaron Gordon when he was age 11. Well, Aaron Gordon just won the world championship with the Nuggets, and they've been on this journey of working on their mind since the age of 11. And so for me, I started with someone in golf, and it turned out that, his coach, after a couple of years and seeing the differences in him, I started when I think he was 10, and his mom had contacted me and said, well, you work with someone this young and no one else will. And I'm like, well, if he shows up, I'll show up. If he cares about this, I care about this. And it's been a wonderful experience. And so he's kind of that version for me. And, now he's in the top program in the world. You talk about the best that, on the planet in the space of golf. That's where his coach is connected to that. And I didn't see that coming. So the whole reason I say that is I think it comes back to the next generation. It comes back to the kids. So I find a lot of times people will contact me and they'll invest in their kids first.
I think it's great. It's like don't put an age limit on the ability to go back and help people with mental performance and what they can do to optimize their lives and their time they have left. I know I'm working with my kids come out in the mornings, and if they come out with me early in the morning, if they're awake. Yeah. Well, if you're coming out, you have to say 3 things you're grateful for. Yep. Right? They're getting used to it. It's a mindset shift that's what we do in this family. We practice gratitude. We visualize what we want in life, or, our goals. And then, before bed, the questions are always, what did you do for somebody else today? Yeah. And so they're 3 and 5, or they'll be 4 and 6 soon, but they're already ready when we lie down in bed to have an answer that, I kept the door open for so-and-so today, or I did, so-and-so was playing on their own and I asked them to play with me. They know that question's coming. So the more you can, I think these things are great tools and great habits for kids to just harness and have a part of their life. That's awesome. I love that, mate.
Yeah. If they can change their relationship to failure.
Yes.
If they can change their relationship to pressure, because every opportunity has pressure because you care about it. You know? The sky's the limit. It literally is. It is literally, and I've seen so many of these. My brother, his dream was he became a national champion, and we're the first brothers to ever do that. And then we're the first brothers to ever win a world championship medal in the same event. But his dream wasn't swimming; it was to get his own show on the Discovery Channel. And so we used the same exact techniques that I've mentioned throughout, and he got his own show on the Discovery Channel. And that's the F-it switch. If you go back to that, it's breaking all the rules. We didn't go to Los Angeles and I get a job in the production side, and he goes out and goes to castings and all, following the rules. It was just go build it, do it. Right.
Yeah.
And we realized that. And so, if people change their relationship to failure and they change their relation, and you just look at failure as collecting information to get better and go through the feedback loop, everything shifts. Change your relationship to pressure. I mean, you're just going to want more pressure because you're going to realize like, this is never going to feel comfortable, but this is where all my opportunities are happening. So I want more of this. So I'm just going to reframe it.
That's when you feel most alive. That's when you feel like you're living.
Yes.
It's like when you're looking over the edge, you're sitting on this edge, and I don't know. Maybe I've had a lot of pressure in my life, but that's when you always feel most alive. And you look back now, and you go, "Yeah, that was really cool. I want more of that."
In hindsight, that's the important point. It always looks great in the rear view mirror.
It does. Oh man. You think back. Sometimes I wish I knew what I know now. If I could have gone back for my own career, some of the tools that I've learned would be quite handy. Fortunately, I had Laura. She was like my mental performance coach, basically throughout the second half of my career. But all right, mate. Last one on the final four. How would you use the remaining days if you only had 6 months to live?
I would say I'm doing it now.
Yeah.
I would have to say that every moment is rich, scary, and worthwhile.
Yeah.
I am doing it. I'm doing it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's funny. I said that to Laura, my wife, Laura, the other day, we kind of did this, and I'm like, I don't think I'd change anything. I'm like, I'm not somebody that has to have a massive goal all the time anymore. I do need to keep moving and even hosting this podcast and doing my work with fast food, the company I'm with, and my training, all bits and pieces that are ticking along. But yeah, it's kind of a nice place to be where you go, this is what I should be doing. It's not, and that's today. Yeah. Look, tomorrow we're a different person. After my conversation with you, I'm a different person again. And it's like the Hintzer model. I love Hintzer's core thing. Do you know who you are? Do you know what you want? Do you know who you are? And are you in control of your own life? And you can ask yourself those questions, but then the next morning you wake up and you're a different person from all the inputs that you've had from around the world. And but yes, I love that, mate. I love that, and I think that's a really great way to end the episode. As always, thoroughly enjoy our conversations. I think this was a very special episode. I think there was a lot of great takeaways in this for everybody listening. I know they were for me. I have notes written down and things that so mate, just truly appreciate you and, what you're doing for so many people, your willingness to come on my show and just share your amazing amount of knowledge. As much as it can be quite simple, it's the extraordinary words that we all need to hear. So I really appreciate you, mate.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity. I know that over time you build a podcast audience, and so I've had it described that you're inviting me into your living room, your trusted living room, so a sacred space. So to me, this has been a sacred exchange, and you've always been a very special person to me because, it's like two little kids in the playground, like, oh, there he is. Yeah, let's play.
Let's play. Hey, let's do that. I know, mate. Well, I'm looking forward to actually, as we grow this show and, doing some of these episodes in person. Where do you live? Well, you're in California, right? Or no?
Tucson, Arizona.
Tucson. That's right.
Yeah.
I knew you were on the other side of the coast there. But, well, mate, yes, once again, I appreciate you. For everybody listening to the show, you can find all the timestamps and everything else at bennettendurance.com/media. All right, stay on the line, Seth.